doubt. It's a part of life for many people, and some may even argue all people, because we don't want to talk about our weaknesses often, and doubt is not something in the church that's a strength, but doubt, I think, is a reality of life for many people, including myself. I'm here with Lynn, and we're looking at the first Sunday after Easter, John chapter 20, and seeing, well, how does God deal with doubt? You know, we know about the opposite, which is faith, and so just starting off, that Thomas says in John chapter 20, one of the 12, called the twin, was not with them when Jesus came. The other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see his hands and the marks of nails, and place my finger in the marks of nails, and place my hands into his side, I will never believe." Lynn, to throw it out with your perspective, we talked before about, well, what are the forms of doubt? This one is, look, dead people, we saw Good Friday, or they didn't call it Good Friday back there. We saw this execution, and we know forget it, he's done. And Jesus died, and that it's over. And Thomas learned that in his life and said, I don't believe he came back from the dead. I want evidence. But also I think there's more to it than that, the ways doubt can show up. Is there anything you want to throw on the table with that, what you see, Lynn?
Well, I think Thomas was momentarily not only doubtful, but lost his faith a little. I mean, it was foretold that Jesus was going to rise from the dead. Thomas may have believed that at one point, but when he was confronted with the reality for a moment, he required absolute proof before he could believe that those scriptures were true. And I think, most, if not all Christians at some point in their journey have moments or circumstances where they doubt their faith as well. Unfortunately, no one else has had the opportunity to revitalize their faith the way Thomas did.
Well, right, and he says that as it goes on. Lynn, when you look at, people will talk about in the medical field, oh, they died for this much time. I don't know what that really means in the medical field. Is there such a thing as dying and coming back to life in medical field?
Well, there certainly are a lot of anecdotal stories about that, and they oftentimes have a kind of uncanny similarity between them. Oftentimes people will say they felt their soul leave their body, and they were witnessing what was going on in the room over their dead body, and they were up in the corner observing, and they could hear what was being said. And but there's some scientific explanation for that phenomenon as well. There's about a 45-second period after the heart stops beating where there's still enough circulation, enough blood to allow cerebral function in the brain. And as the brain begins to die from lack of oxygen, apparently the phenomenon of your life flashing before you is part of the process the brain goes through as its memory banks begin to die.
Yeah, so from a scientific perspective, and I've heard that explanations, and perhaps you've heard this too, is that people that have died and had out-of-body experiences, which some people would say it's been weird in a sense that they went up above a room and they looked down and they saw medical professionals or EMS people at work from another angle rather than where they were laying. And you look at that and go, whoa, and people will talk about that. And they also will talk about a light sometimes. Mm-hmm. I guess I was getting at too with you is like, well, what's the record? If your heart quits, how that baby's going to start up again. What's the longest that heart's quit and then auto started again? Because I can't see it, of course, after 3 days. Hey.
Yes. Well, a lot of those near-death experiences are cardiac arrests that are then resuscitated over a period of 15 or 20 minutes after the heart has stopped.
So when the heart stops, is there anything in the body that can kick it on again, or you have to have something outside, electrical shock or something to get it going?
Usually, if the heart stops beating completely, called asystole, it doesn't restart itself.
It doesn't, usually.
I don't know of any instances where that's been documented. It usually takes cardioversion shock or resuscitation.
Right. And I think that this makes sense with Thomas. I mean, you know, if we learn anything in this life is, was I say around Easter all the time, Dad is dead.
Yes.
And that I understand where he's coming from, that he believes, you know, after all that he's seen and after the time that's passed, hey, this is over. You know, our hopes and dreams about restoring Israel and Jesus being the king, we're done. And you could understand where he's coming from, where he learned in his life certain things. And, you know, we talked about being kids. I look back at when I was a child, you know, I believed in God all the time. But not heavily. It wasn't like my life was my life and I was going to go live it my way. I mean, God wasn't a big issue for me at one time. He became a very big issue for me. But we look at our youth, and I don't know if there's any children that are, young kids that are born atheist, or you become an atheist.
I think children are probably initially a product of their environment. I grew up in a Christian family in a Christian neighborhood, and everybody for blocks and blocks went to the same Presbyterian church. It was every Sunday.
You didn't have Lutherans up there in Duluth?
Oh, yes, it was a Lutheran church. We were much better hockey players than them. And
Oh, you guys were the Presbyterians,
we
huh?
both had hockey teams, yes.
I think, you know, Norway, and you got Sweden and the Scandinavian folks. Well, like when you look at your youth, Lynn, what would you say is more, when you looked at both parents, who would you say had the greatest faith of the two?
I haven't thought about that in a long time. I would just, off the top of my head, I would say it was probably my mother.
Your mother? And it usually seems to be the women. When I grew up, it was like, well, Dad and Mom both went to church. My father became an alcoholic, I guess, and then he would start to use excuses that he didn't want to go to church, but Mom would basically go to church every Sunday. It was what it was. It was the culture, you know, in Duluth.
Exactly.
You talk about the culture being there, and then my mother growing up in Carroll, Iowa, I think that it was there. My grandfather from Ireland, on my dad's side, it was like, when he was asked in an interview one time, did you not go to church? Oh, it was like, oh, everybody did. Everybody, you know, this is what you did. You were told this is the truth, which I think can be problematic because people can follow institutions where you don't ever deal with the issues.
Yes.
Thomas is dealing with the issue.
Exactly.
But can you get in other environments? So you talked about going away to UC Berkeley back in the 60s.
Yes, I grew up in Duluth in that environment I mentioned earlier through college, and then I was accepted to graduate school at the University of California in Berkeley.
1 in 2,000.
Roughly, yes.
Almost as hard as the NFL draft.
Yeah,
You know?
it doesn't pay as well. But, in any case, that environment that I was thrust into was a real culture shock for me because it was diametrically opposite to the environment I had grown up in. All of my colleagues, my friends, my professors, the whole environment in UC Berkeley was dominantly atheistic and aggressively so. And they mocked people that had faith in God or Jesus, and you were treated as a second-class citizen or someone that wasn't up to their standards of academia, you know. So it was a tough environment for me to be thrust into. And I think it changed me. I mean, maybe peer group pressure or whatever, the environment kind of over time absorbed me. And I became part of that environment for much of my adult life.
But when you met Barb, who you married, she didn't go to UC Berkeley and get that pressure that you had, the peer pressure to not be one of these fools who believe in this nonsense. What, Jesus rose from the dead? You know what?
Yeah,
She didn't get into any peer pressure like you did.
not at all. Barbara was 100% strong Christian from childhood till the day she died.
Yeah, but we also talk about, and I like this text because one of the problems with it is that I believe we as human beings, what we do is we try to be righteous. I think what's missing in our life is our self-worth and our value, and we get that by doing things, and we'll use almost any way to do it. And one of the ways you can do it is you get into a church community, and who are the good people of the church community? Well, those are faith people. Those aren't doubt people.
Right?
And so you can get peer pressure there to believe too, because you want to fit in. We don't want to be ostracized. I think maybe one of our greatest fears of life is being ostracized.
Yeah, I think that's true. And, whether people acknowledge it or not, I think the need to be accepted by your peer group is a very prominent need that people have. And I think my early days as a child, I was a Christian predominantly because everybody, all my friends and family, they were all Christians, and it was just part of the growing up environment. In Berkeley, just the opposite was true. There wasn't a Christian in sight. In fact, they were ostracized if they ever found one.
I wonder how they got that to be. Was it like when you filled out the application, did it say, are you atheist or Christian?
Church preference? No.
No. Right, I mean, that does form us a lot, and then I think doubt can come for people is when you grow up in a community where this is just accepted part of life. And it makes sense. Where did we come from? Oh, God put us here. And then you say, okay, well, that explains that, and then you move on with your life. But I think to step back and ask yourself, hey, wait a minute. Is there something really out there? How did we get here? Why is there a me? Jesus Christ, did he really become God? I mean, you're telling me that this universe that goes thousands and thousands of light years, who knows how far it goes? I don't even know if I trust astronomers, but I just say, wait a minute, what was this? And then not only that, you could look around and say, there's Muslims, there's Hindi, how do we know? I think that doubt can be beneficial. Don't go along with what you've always been told before.
Yeah, I would agree. I think after my period of atheism, I started to have questions about the existence of God resurface, and I decided to really, and it was in large part attributable to marrying Barbara, who was a very strong Lutheran and Christian. And so I decided to make a concerted effort to prove to myself that God existed and Jesus rose from the dead. And I devoted a fair amount of time. I was hoping to have a moment like Thomas had, where I would, beyond a shadow of a doubt, find some evidence I could hang my belief on. But in the absence of that, I made significant progress reading a lot of the works of C.S. Lewis and other authors who had gone personally on that same journey from atheism to Christianity, and that helped me considerably.
C.S. Lewis did?
Yes.
Right, and I know there was that part we discussed with C.S. Lewis before of how he actually became a Christian. I like his progression. One was, I know there's a God and it's not me. I think it was like he said, that's it. That's all I can tell you right now. There's something there that put us here, and it's not me. That he understood the self-centeredness of the humanity, that somehow we can believe we show up like in 1960 when I breathed my first breath. Oh, I've got all truth now. Are these guys even at Berkeley? But then he moved to that place we're going to the zoo with his brother in the sidecar. I don't see sidecars around anymore today. And he says, I can't tell you why. I went from getting in that sidecar, we got to the zoo, I believed in God.
Yes.
But he was struggling with the issue.
Yes, and his transition was very interesting. He became a theist, as you mentioned. He recognized the existence of some power greater than himself. And then he took the second step to Christianity, but he struggled with that because he said he was reluctant to give his life to Jesus because he realized when he did that, he would no longer be in control of his own life, and that was a difficult thing for him to do. I'm not sure what it was about the sidecar, but when he got in it, he was not a Christian, and when they arrived at the zoo,
Right.
he was.
And I appreciate that about C.S. Lewis too, and I don't know if what you just said, you identified with, but I did a lot, because when I first started to come back, I told you that, well, I kind of believed in God, but it's generic, well, he's there, but I'm not going to go after. I had a plan, actually. I was going to live my life my way, and plan A didn't work, plan B would be go find God. But I didn't do that. I was invited to a church, and I took it serious, and it scared the living daylights out of me. These people are going to church like, oh, we're just showing up to church, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what if this is all one big fraud, and I build my life on some big fraud? And so I was very scared, and I struggled. I did pray to God, but how do you know this institution is telling you this? And because I felt that I would lose my life.
Yes.
And that I felt that, I knew about cults, even though Lutheranism is considered no cult in the world today, because cults are usually considered groups that are not socially accepted.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, why did I do that? I don't know. I don't know why, and I think there's the mystery of C.S. Lewis saying, I don't know why.
Yes.
I just came to that place. And so we hear a lot of that. I've heard that around this church quite a bit, where even people who say, I've always believed in God, he's always been a part of my life, it's always been important, and that means not just he's there generic and he's going to take care of me, but it's the God of Jesus, the words there, and I read his words, that they took it serious.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, to me, Lynn, what I like about the story, well, there's a couple things. One is doubt shows up in different ways. I like to talk about that. It's more than just saying I believe. It's how do you live? But Jesus works with doubt, with Thomas. Thomas is not wanting to fit in with the group, kind of like UC Berkeley. He's saying, hey, I know we're all buddies. We've been running around together for 3 years. I'm not buying this. You show me. Don't give me none of your gaslighting stuff here, I need to see it before I believe it. And don't tell me I'm seeing what I don't think I'm seeing. So Jesus works with him.
Yes. And Jesus said to Thomas that moment, now you believe in me because you've seen me, you've put your finger in my side, but truly blessed are those who have not seen me and still believe. And that's the group that all the rest of us are in. Thomas was an exception. And I think for me, it was easy. It became relatively easy for me to make significant progress in becoming a Christian again and believing in God and Jesus. And until my wife got cancer. And then my beliefs I really began questioning those beliefs that I had recently reacquired, because I didn't feel like, with all the praying I did during those weeks and months, that anybody was listening to me. It seemed that the outcome was the same as it would have been had I not prayed at all. And then I began to question whether I really knew how to pray or whether I was deserving to have my prayers answered. Or the other option is maybe there's nobody on the other end of my prayers who's listening. And that was a real period of doubt. And I think that doubt now, as time has gone on past that point, it's that doubt and that temporary loss of faith has helped me to regain my spirituality in a stronger way than I was before.
Then when you look at that, this is all really fresh, by the way, with Lynn. When you look at that time, and we're talking probably just a year ago, was it more of my prayers are going off into the air? I felt that way before too. Or was it more of, hey, if I did certain things, God would be answering my prayer and this would turn out okay? You talked about those two.
Yeah. Well, the first thought I had was, and I was aware from the beginning that what I was asking for in prayers, I didn't really believe was possible. I mean, after 35 years in the medical profession, I saw innumerable times where people prayed for incurable diseases to be cured or terminal patients to recover, and it never happened. And I found myself doing the same thing. Where you have a sense of desperation where you'd like to help. You feel like, especially as a physician, I used to being able to do something, but when it came down to my own wife dying of cancer, there was nothing I could do. So initially I prayed for there not to be cancer there. And then I realized, come on, in all my years of practicing medicine, have I ever seen that happen? And the answer was no. So then I thought, well, maybe I'm just not praying for the right thing. And I tried to change what I asked from God. And I think maybe in retrospect, some of those prayers may have been answered. I asked for her, if she was going to die of this terminal disease, that at least it be comfortable.
Yeah.
And it was. I mean, she died with a smile on her face.
Yeah. I've ever seen a smile on someone's face. I haven't. I've been with some people, a few people that have died, but never, I don't think, with a smile on their face. But we pray for a nice exit out of this life. I think for most of us, it's the pain that we're most concerned with.
Right.
And we want God to fix things, and I think that can bring about doubt too, which we say, well, why is there evil and suffering in the world? I know I'm taking a jump here. God, fix this. How could you allow such a thing to happen? Mm-hmm. And then if it does happen, we say, well, the heck with that. But to believe in God despite all evidence. God does want to reach us by faith, and I think that the beauty, again, of the story here is that he's saying, look, Thomas, you're doubting, you don't have it together, I'm going to work with you. Mm-hmm. To me, what I'm learning in my life, like a lot now, is don't give up. That's probably the theme of my life right now, I'm not giving up. But I see that in the New Testament. So, if you search God in your life, don't give up. It's once we say, that's it, I'm done, if this is who you are. We had one in our church like this who said, I went to Vietnam, I saw what happened over there, I was in the ugly, and I looked at it at the time, said, okay, God, if that's what it is, forget it.
Yeah.
But then he came back, and God worked in his life and restored him.
I think that I had a similar realization that I gave up on God, honestly, for a period of time surrounding Barb's death. But as more time passed after her death, I realized that I don't think God gave up on me. And began to have some deeper understanding of what it means to accept Jesus and what Christianity is about than I had even before I gave up on God.
Yeah. And to me, I always think what if Freud was here right now saying, oh yeah, you guys, you just want to create this all in your mind.
Yes.
But the reality is Freud can't prove this. We can go back to UC Berkeley in the 60s. They can't prove this. But this is for me what it is. It's just what you said. We're shaky, but the God who loves us holds on to us. He's
Yes.
bigger than our. That we as human beings, I believe, were created for something greater than ourselves. And I think what's helped me mostly with when I've struggled was, where are you going to hang your hat? Someone recently said that. And then to say, in Jesus Christ. And I think what's important about what Jesus Christ did, the mystery to it all. And if you're out there searching, I would encourage you, look to the cross, look to the cross. Now we can talk about this, and I do, value and acceptance and so many things that I think we're looking for come together, but I believe God will reveal that to you. And I think what is important about our discussion here today, two guys who've struggled, is that don't give up. And the more important thing is, does God give up on us? And did God give up on Thomas? Did Thomas just say, hey, Thomas, I told you about all this stuff. What the heck is the matter with you? Get out of here. You're not one of the boys anymore. We're going to dispatch you with Judas. No, he said, okay, Thomas. The last part we got at here was John, who wrote the scriptures, talks about going to the Word. He says, a lot of things have happened in the Word that you don't know about, but these are written that you would believe that Jesus is the Christ. So John is saying, go to the scriptures.
Yes.
I think doubt can be resolved, and I think when it gets resolved, we can come back stronger than ever. But we just want to say thank you for being here, and appreciate Lynn coming back. We had technical difficulties last week. We were able to get him back in to listen to two guys and Thomas on how we've struggled. We hope you come and see us again. So God's peace be with you. Take care now.